Larry is on vacacion, as they say, and I'm honored to be able to step in and fill in for him. I've got my good friend Steve West in studio. Senator West, it's great to have you here on News Talk 590 WVLK.
Thank you, Senator. Pleasure to be here. Look forward to the interesting topic of medical marijuana.
Should we take some phone calls later in the show?
Absolutely.
Well, if you want to call in and ask any questions about the new medical marijuana bill that will become law, go into effect on January 1 of 2025, you can call in the Stuttgart Motors text line, 859-253-5959. That's the Stuttgart Motors text line. You can text or call us at 859-253-5959. So my pledge to you on this show is we're not going to talk about any federal issues. How does it feel? And everyone should understand, Steve and I are very good friends, one of my closest friends in the Senate. You all know, as longtime listeners, I've been an opponent of medical marijuana, but thanks to his excellent work on the final bill, I became a yes vote, and I think it was the right thing to do. How does it feel to you, Senator Steve West, after working on this for so long, finally getting passage of a medical marijuana bill?
It feels really good. Going in, I really wasn't sure that it would cross the finish line. I've worked on this for 5 years with many other people. We put a ton of work into this. But ultimately, I think what got it across the finish line was fine people like you who did change their vote. And others, we have a group of young senators, new senators, that came in, and they had different views on medical marijuana, and that may have been what put it over the top.
I think you're right, and I've spoken about this with Larry before. Coming into this session, we have 6 new members, and I felt like the dynamic could change on both medical marijuana and sports betting, and it did, and I think that was a major factor in both of them passing. As for me, I had to separate the recreational pot smokers from the people who you've worked so closely with, and I've heard from for years about how medical marijuana can help them with their pain. And I said that, people ask me, why'd you change your vote? Everybody knows I'm kind of old-fashioned and stubborn and don't change my mind very often, and my response was compassion. And your constituents from Maysville, Eric and Michelle Crawford, and another guy I know, a military vet named Justin Lewandowski, and a lady from my district in Dry Ridge up in Grant County who told me she agreed with me on everything else except for medical marijuana. And, why couldn't I, as a good Republican, come around to help give her some relief from that pain? So those are the things what did it. And then the work you did on really narrowly focusing the bill. I know it's a 150-page bill, but it is very narrowly focused. Why don't you talk a little bit about the narrow focus, how medical marijuana can be delivered and for what afflictions? And when we come back on the other side of the break, Earl and Eric, we're going to take your calls. If you'll stay holding on the line after the break, you'll be able to talk to Senator Steve West.
Yeah, sure. There is no smoking in the bill, but there are many other ways that you can receive the product.
And the no smoking was a big thing for me.
Right. And really, the no smoking component, if we have a smoking component in the bill doesn't pass. I don't know if it passes either chamber if we left that component in there. But there's there's vaping, there's other ways to get the natural product into your system. It's not just pills.
And what are those ways?
Vaping. There's vaporizers. Various. You have how you have drug paraphernalia. Well, you have the same thing here. You have different things that can be used to,
like a dropper,
yes,
a dropper for a tincture,
tinctures, and other methods. So,
gummies.
Yes. I will say, CHFS is going to be doing the regulations, so they will get this pretty well nailed down to all those specifics. But although we allowed no smoking, we did leave it fairly wide open for other methods to receive the product. And then, of course, And then it is, this, the deal. This went back and forth many, many times over 5 years. The first bill was broad and expansive. One version of the bill was limited to almost nothing. And the end result, the end bill, there was kind of an in-between, kind of a middle ground. And
a compromise, which is what it usually takes to get these big bills passed.
Yeah, a compromise, which I'll go through the list real quick. There's 6 items: any type or form of cancer, chronic, severe, and intractable debilitating pain, epilepsy, other seizure disorders, MS, chronic nausea or cyclical vomiting, which is a thing. Very important one here, PTSD is one of the 6.
And PTSD as affirmed by a doctor.
Correct. Someone can't just roll in and say, I claim that I have PTSD. It has to be signed off on by their physician that they actually have PTSD.
Because it is a true malady and affliction that can be diagnosed by a doctor. You can't just come in and say, I've had a bad day at work or a fight with my spouse and I need some medical marijuana. You've got to be diagnosed as having post-traumatic stress disorder by a physician.
Correct. It has to be diagnosed and certified and on paper. And then the 7th one, really quickly, is any disease or medical condition for which the Kentucky Center for Cannabis establishes. So maybe we can talk about that more after the break.
Well, we've got a couple folks already lined up. Earl and Eric have called in on the Stuttgart Motors text line. That's 859-253-5959. If you want to send us a text, we'll try to get to it this hour. Or you can call in and we'll put you on the air and talk with Senator Steve West about medical marijuana and its passage in the Kentucky General Assembly. Here on Larry Glover Live, this is Damon Thayer filling in for Larry this week. My special in-studio guest this hour is Senator Steve West from right next door in Bourbon County. You live in Millersburg.
Yes, just north of Paris.
Yeah, people like to say you're in Paris, but that would be like someone who lives in Sadieville saying they're from Georgetown. You live in Millersburg, just north where the military academy used to be, correct?
Correct. That is now Mustard Seed Hill. They've done a lot of great work there. Totally revamped the campus.
Very good. You have the coolest moniker in the state Senate because you get to be referred to as the senator from Bourbon, which has all sorts of je ne sais quoi associated with it.
Especially for someone like you who's heavily invested in your own entity.
I do love my horses in Bourbon, and you've got plenty of those in your district. All right, we're going to go to the callers, and we're going to take a big risk here and start out. Our first caller is going to be Earl. Earl, you're on the air with Senator Steve West here on Larry Glover Live.
Well, I've been calling you for 4 weeks try to educate. I'm glad that you have decided to the people out there realize you cannot smoke pot now. You cannot roll a joint or use a bong, correct?
Is this directed at Damon or
both of you?
You go ahead, Senator West.
So under this medical marijuana bill, you are not allowed to smoke under this version. As stated earlier, if we left smoking in there, some states allow that. But in order to get our bill passed in Kentucky, we had to leave that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where will the potheads get the drug from? You said the vaping. Will that come from a pharmacy?
No, the bill lays all that out. So we didn't get into that in the first segment, but it's going to be heavily regulated. There's going to be cannabis cultivators in Kentucky. There's 4 tiers of those. They have to be in Kentucky, and the Cabinet for Health and Family Services will set up all the regulations on, how it's to be grown. The goal is ultimately that this isn't just, regular pot grown up a holler somewhere. This is a pharmaceutical grade product that's, at the end of the day, we got to make sure it doesn't have fentanyl in it. Doesn't have, it's not compromised. It's actually being used for what its intended purpose is.
When a person is sick and needs medicine, they have to go to the pharmacy to get the drugs. except for marijuana, looks like it. You're going to sell it from pot stores, correct?
We're going to sell it from dispensaries, and there's a good reason we did that, because currently under federal law, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, and so if it's sold through pharmacies, then pharmacies are in jeopardy of losing their DEA number, which wouldn't allow them to operate. So if we're going to have it like 37 other states have it, then we had to set it up this way and use dispensaries.
Well, you know, the other states that you look at are a disaster. California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York State, where you can have a pound of marijuana, a huge baggie full of marijuana, and just receive a citation. Now, what kind of punishment have you dealt out for people who break the law if they don't have a prescription? Did you have a high fine for them for using it illegally?
There's already statute that dictates how someone is punished for possession. And another thing to point out, we really didn't get a chance to get into this in the first segment. This does not go into effect until January 1st of 2025. So the Cabinet for Health and Family Services will be promulgating regulations on this, and we'll be back in session again to be able to review all those regulations and crimes and punishments and all those sorts of things. But yeah, there are fines, and the cabinet will be coming up with the amount. You brought up the amount. That's a very important thing. They'll come up with what is a 30-day supply. And important.
Isn't that your job? You wrote the law, right? You should have a law there about people who disobey the law and using it for recreation use, and you have no.
That's not true, Earl. He just said, first of all, this is not recreational marijuana. Otherwise, I would have voted no. I'm unalterably opposed to legalizing recreational marijuana. And a lot of the states you referred to, Michigan, Colorado, California, they are in a severe marijuana meltdown right now because they've gone full-on recreational. This is not recreational pot, and there are laws and punishments in place. And the state police has a major marijuana eradication program in effect. So that's still in effect. So your accusations are actually not true. So, but I do appreciate the good questions from Earl. If anybody else wants to call in and ask Senator West, call the Stuttgart Motors text line at 859-253-5959. But I think that's an important distinction. This is not recreational marijuana.
Very important distinction. The opponents of the bill brought this up during session. They brought up California and many other examples of where it's gone off the rails. And I had to point out every time, those are all states with recreational marijuana. This is not, that's not happening here. Another thing they do to cause it to go off the rails is, as with most, many blue states, they just tax the heck out of it. So California, New York, they overtax it. And then people revolve back to the black market, and so they end up having a horrible program, and people using black market stuff that's laced with fentanyl and all these other things. So,
well, we don't want to have that in Kentucky. And one of the good things about Kentucky often being the last state to legalize things like medical marijuana and sports betting is we can learn from what other states have done right and what they've done wrong. This is Damon Thayer. I'm in for Larry Glover. Larry Glover Live. Give us a call on the Stuttgart Motors text line. We'll be back after this break.